Welcome to selfdiscoverymedia.com, where the orchard of wisdom shows are at your fingertips. It ignites your soul, your heart, your spirit, your mind, and your body with illumination from people who have made the journey before you. They're here now to help you on your journey, on your path of self-discovery. We are funded by you, the audience, and the people we interview. If you wish to support us, please go to selfdiscoverymedia.com and press on our Fund Action button. Anything is appreciated. We'd like you to sit back and enjoy the shows. Here we go. Welcome to selfdiscoveryradio.com, where the discovery of self is but a show away. With 1,000+ archive shows and new shows coming to you every Tuesday, we bring you illuminating people from around the globe. Visit our store for their services and books and enjoy the show. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of For the Love of Music. I'm your host, Sarah Troy, and my guest today is Justin Johnson. I discovered him on Facebook when I saw him playing a shovel like a guitar, and I thought, this can't sound like anything nice, just kind of a neat little trick. Yet the music that he was playing for it was absolutely awesome. So I had to know more about him and reach out to do an interview with him because of his uniqueness, the different instrumentation that he has there. But as I was saying, I had a problem. I was trying to pick a YouTube to put on his posting, and I was also trying to go to bed, and I'm there an hour later, unable to pick any one of them because all of them are absolutely bloody marvelous and get right into your soul and into your spirit and totally speak to you. So I know that you're going to be totally stoked by his music. But let's discover his journey. He's literally performed, throughout the mainland of Australia, Tasmania, Europe, the United Kingdom, coast to coast in North America. How does he put these instruments together? Where does he get his ideas from? He has also started a school called the Roots Music School. He's the founder of it, and clearly somebody where he's got the music in his soul. This is what he was designed to do, and this is what he shares with us. So I know you're going to enjoy it. So welcome to the show, Justin.
Hey, great to talk to you. Glad to be on the show.
Now I have to ask you, a shovel, a spade, whatever everybody wants to call it, wherever they're coming from. How did you make that into a musical instrument?
Well, the guitar that you're talking about, it is actually a spade, which is similar to a shovel. That's the platform of the guitar. And a friend of mine who I met on the road in 2015, his name's Roger Berry, and when I was touring down in Mississippi, in the Mississippi Delta, doing a few festivals down there, he came out before one of my shows, and I had met him online previously. He came out and he brought this shovel with 3 strings and a magnetic pickup, and he basically built a 3-string shovel a 3-string guitar out of a shovel. And at that point, I had already played, hundreds and hundreds of 3-string guitars. I already wrote a book on how to play them, DVDs and that kind of thing. So I was really familiar with 3-stringed instruments and 3-string roots instruments, like homemade, found object instruments. So a few minutes after he gave me this shovel guitar, I was playing it on stage. I decided to try it, and I said, well, yeah, let me play it during this show. And after that, he gave it to me. I took it on tour, and And the specific video that you're talking about, I think it was one that I filmed in my backyard last October, and it just took off. It went crazy. I think just about a day or two after I posted it, I only shared it once, and it had about 8 million views online. And a few weeks later, I think right now, actually, it has almost 40 million views just in the one place that I first shared it.
Yeah.
And
one can understand why, because of, the music that you get from it. I mean, first, what is he playing? And then the music that you get from it is like mind-blowing. So, it just shows that music really can come from everything, can't it? You don't have to have
absolutely
the expensive guitar, although I'm sure they're very nice, but you can make music out of everything.
Yeah, and when you think of it, I'm a huge fan of history, and I like to learn a lot and draw a lot from history. And when you think about the first instruments or any instrument you can think of, at some point it never existed. Someone had to make it. Someone had to invent it. You take the electric guitar in general, and you have people like Les Paul and Leo Fender, these early innovators who said, the acoustic guitar is great, but it can't do this. How do we make it do this using technology or just using whatever's lying around? And people innovate that way. If it becomes successful, then eventually people don't even consider that one day, that had never existed. And something like the shovel, these objects like the shovel that people are turning into instruments and putting electric guitar pickups on and electrifying. It's interesting because, there's this appeal that people instinctively have, like, well, I've never seen a shovel played before. But then when you hear it, if it's in the right hands and if someone knows how to make it sound like it should sound like, it can be amazing how much tone and sustain and voice you can get out of an object like that. If you approach it like a serious instrument, then oftentimes even the most unusual objects, if you make an instrument out of them, can be amazingly beautiful and inspiring.
Yeah, case in point, you've done one with an oil can, and
right.
And I've noticed some other things that you've done there which I wouldn't even know what they are, but they're not the regular guitar. And how do you have to string them differently? What is it? I mean, with the oil can, do you hollow it out in order to get the sound? I mean, how do you get the sound out of it?
Well, the actual art of building an instrument is very, very similar, whether you're making a conventional or traditional acoustic guitar or electric guitar, or you're making something like an oil can guitar or shovel guitar or something like that. You basically, the first thing structurally is you have to hold that string tension. The guitar can't snap like a mousetrap or something on you. And it will if you don't have enough strength actually holding it together. But then you also want it to be able to resonate. You want it to be free enough to resonate from the string vibrations. And it's sort of like a dance between being strong and being resonant. So if it's too strong, it's not resonant, and vice versa. And so doesn't matter what object it is, if you find that right balance, you can get the tone out of something. And something like, like we're talking about a shovel, it has a hardwood, neck on it, the actual neck of the shovel. It's very strong. The tempered steel blade is very resonant, and so it sounds, interestingly enough, even though it's thinner and lighter than a really heavy solid body electric guitar, it sounds a lot like a solid body electric guitar because it has very similar resonance, very similar principles like that. And so, a lot of these other objects aren't resonant, but they sound great because they're not resonant. And people aren't used to hearing that. People have worked for hundreds of years to make things sound better and better and better. And then when you hear something that just sounds kind of nasty, kind of rootsy, that also sounds great if you're playing music that goes with that tone. And a lot of that early Delta blues, that early hill country blues, early gospel, a lot of those, I always call those genres roots music.
Oh, yeah.
In general. Roots music sounds great on instruments like that, and I just love those. That's why old vintage guitars sound good, too, sometimes, is there's just an age and like a chaos to the way they used to make things back then because they hadn't figured out all the things they know now. And that's sort of like a wild card. It makes it interesting.
So talking about roots, what are your roots? I mean, it almost feels like you're probably born with an instrument in your hand. I mean, did you come to it later? Was it something that was there for you? I mean, where did it all start?
I've always loved music as long as I can remember, and it wasn't like when I was a little kid. I just knew I was going to be a professional musician or anything like that. But I always knew there was a passion, and I was always incredibly drawn to music and art in general, whether it's visual art, musical art, anything really. The whole idea of being creative and someone making a statement with something creatively has always appealed to me, and I'm just very passionate about that. So I think, when I picked up my first actual guitar, it was an obvious connection. I felt it like, this is the instrument for me, this is the art form for me. But before that, it was just a general love of music and art that then, kind of got narrowed down into guitar specifically.
Did you have any training, or was this something just, self-taught, felt-taught?
It's a mixture of everything, a mixture of both, because I did take, basically I learned guitar from anyone and everyone I could find, whether it was a legitimate teacher or someone, at college, or it was something that I just watched someone else do and picked it up, or said, I got to watch that from that person until I figure it out. And then, honestly, though, the most important learning, the most important education I've ever gotten was just playing live and just being in front of people. And whether it sounds like you want it to or it doesn't, you're learning something. And there's no better motivation than getting in front of a large group of people and doing something wrong until you get it right, because that's what motivates you to want to do it better. I've played with, everything from country bands to bluegrass bands, reggae bands, soul bands. And when I first started, I'd play with anybody and everyone I could, because I wanted to learn those styles the hard way, which is being on stage and actually learning it in front of people. So I think that was really the best education.
I happen to agree there. What is your soul music? I mean, when you play the blues, totally, you absolutely resonate, and it feels like there's blues in everything that you do. Is that your root?
Absolutely. I really believe that blues music and, roots blues music, early blues music it's like my language musically. If I always use this metaphor when describing this, it's, I'm American. If I go and learn another language, I could be fluent in another language, but I'm still going to speak with an accent from where I came from. And I feel like, when I play jazz music, I play it with a blues accent, or when I play reggae music, it's with a blues accent. So blues is my actual, language where I came from musically, is how I look at that.
I mean, if you think about it, blues is that foundational ingredient in everything, isn't it? It's in the jazz, it's in, obviously in the Motown, it's in a lot of our real grooving music that you really and utterly can feel. There is a blues element, a blues seeding to it.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because, again, when I talk about history and learning, I love to learn about the cultures when I'm touring in other countries, other parts of the world, and dive into those roots, traditions as well. What I generally find is that when you trace any country's music or any culture's music back farther and farther to the past, it becomes more similar. There's almost like an underlying human language, I think, that we all speak musically. A lot of, break it down theoretically, it's a lot of pentatonic scales. It's a lot, simpler harmonies, simpler melodies. But there's something intuitive about those styles, those early styles, that I think everyone kind of instinctively understands to a degree. And I think blues, American blues music is one of those root styles that really caught on worldwide. But if you go, you research other styles too, you'll find a very similar vibe, I guess, a very similar soul. And there's just something about it. Like you said, blues music, it seems like it's at the heart of all of these genres. Because there is something instinctive in that,
Yeah, even when you're listening to a lot of music, especially African countries, it's kind of based in the drums. Rhythm is in the drums. we know whether the drums are with their feet or actually with drums, everything gives that boom, and but still the rhythm in there, the beat in there, it's all kind of really very earthy and very soul depth, it's they're not singing from the head, it's the singing from the very root, and the very soul of our being, isn't it? And you can really tell when that music comes into play, whether it is traditional or whether it's brought into more mainstream music.
Yeah, the vibe, and that's the honesty, I think, too, when you kind of forget about what you're doing and you just let yourself breathe musically and you let yourself out there in a completely subconscious and honest way. And I think that's when the music really is at its best.
What would you say for you? I mean, are you a disciplined performer? You can get out and play the same number over and over again the same way, or are you a jammer? Do you prefer to just kind of get out there along with some other musicians and just let the wind take you where you need to go?
Well, I'm usually on the jamming side of that. I like to do things differently. Every time I play a certain song, there's always going to be something different about it. There's a lot of improvisation in my music generally, and I love the fire that comes from, this is the moment, this song was the best this day. When you get done with a song, maybe you've played it 100 times before, or maybe this is the first time you played it, and it just feels like that was the best I've ever played that song. And that's what happens, I think, when you leave those things open for interpretation, when you allow yourself to play things differently. But then again, there are some genres and some songs that really, to do that song the best, you have to try to play it the same way, but play it as good as possible. Put it as much emotion into the inflections as possible. And like a lot of classical music is that way, and you wouldn't want to mess with that with certain genres, right, because that is one of the characteristics of those genres that makes them amazing. And a whole symphony also couldn't play together if everyone was making up their own parts.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of think about, like, for example, the album I'm working on right now is my first full band album that I've done. I'm playing with drummers, bass players, keyboardists, horn players, vocalists, all these different musicians. And I have to let them know what I want them to play. So it's up to me to say, am I going to give them a sheet of music and say, you have to play this note by note? Or am I going to listen to the musician and say, this is what they sound like and they feel like? And, how much guidance do I need to give this musician in order to get the part that I need out of them to come through? And that comes down to feeling and listening and just trusting your instinct on what sounds the most compelling, and whether it's going to be a better song if everyone plays the same part, or if everyone's kind of loose and feels it out and has a good time with it.
Well, I mean, a lot of it comes to your audience, doesn't it? I mean, you can have the basic structure of a song there, but depending on your audience is going to be how you're going to deliver it that night. And you may find that there's a particular section you want to stretch out because the audience is so into it. And so you've really got to have a really good synergy with your group, with your band, to know when, like, just go for it on the drums, go for it on the guitar, just, the audience is loving it, extend it, and, not be put out by that, be able to kind of read the audience and what they want. And if you've got that kind of synergy, then it really makes for a very cohesive band.
I love that feeling too, the feeling you're just being of, when the moment's right, and if you're playing with the right people and the energy is right between the audience and the stage, then it's almost effortless. It's almost like everyone knows exactly what to do, and you never come about it. You never said, we're going to do this at this point. It just happens. It's really a language, Music gets compared to language so often, but I really think it's sort of like the subconscious human language that we all speak.
Did you ever see the movie August Rush?
No, I haven't.
Oh my goodness, you've got to see that. The guitar playing, you have to see that. But also the story, it's about an orphan who believes his parents are still out there, but both the parents don't know that the child is still alive, and so don't know of his existence. And so he escapes, but he is a prodigy, ends up in a musical school, where he literally makes music out of anything he hears. He hears the cars going by, the doors shutting, the subway underneath, and everything becomes to him, part of the music. And I think if you really are a true musician, you really do hear the music in everything around you, don't you? It kind of becomes a part of it.
Absolutely. And there's an exercise, we call it an exercise or meditation, whatever you want to call it. But I think it's a great thing to do. I try to do it at least once a day where it doesn't have to quiet out. It doesn't have to be, any specific conditions. But if you just stop what you're doing and listen to as many sounds as possible, and you just keep trying to listen for more sounds, and if, like right here where I'm sitting looking out the window, I can hear the cars in the distance. I can hear sounds inside the house. You realize that, you've been listening to the air conditioner
Yes.
For an hour and you never even realized it, or maybe some sound in the other room that you didn't realize was going on, and you start to hear the animals outside. You start to hear, water or something like that, and you realize, I'm hearing these things all the time, and you just kind of drown them out. You don't pay any attention to them consciously, but you're organizing all of these sounds in your mind all the time. And it's the same thing with mixing music. I think about that a lot. Like right now for this album, we're in the mixing phase where we've recorded the entire album, but now we need to assign, basically volume levels for every instrument, every drum, every part of every song, in order to make it the experience of listening to it sound natural. So if you study nature, then you can learn, even though I'm not listening to music right now, I can learn from my surroundings what natural mixing is, sounds like, and how things sound natural in a given space.
You'll love the movie August Rush. I highly recommend you see it.
Yeah, I'm going to have to check that out.
It's got Robin Williams in it as well. But it's an older movie, 2007 or something, but I highly recommend it. I think you're going to get a good kick out of it. Do you, when you record, have the whole band together, or is it separate?
It's a combination of both. My last two albums, they might sound full band albums, but I played all the parts myself on them.
Wow.
So, there might be six instruments on a song, but I played every one at a time, and then recorded the next one and the next one and the next one. So for albums like that I do entirely on my own, I'll of course overdub every part and I'll play each part separately. But with this album, Driving It Down, the one that I'm working on finalizing right now, it's a combination of both. So because we had musicians, I'm here in Nashville right now, in Tennessee, where I live, and so there's such great pools of talent around here, music-wise. I wanted to really, have fun and get into the art of choosing the right people for the right parts in a band for an album, and so this time the whole band would come in, and I'd say, okay, I want guitar, keyboard, drums, bass, maybe electric bass on this, and then maybe percussion, and then maybe some organ as well as acoustic piano. And so, you start fleshing the arrangement out in your mind, and then for the actual recording, it might just be the first drum part, me playing guitar, a rhythm guitar, the bass, and the organ. And then after that, we'll listen to it and say, okay, it needs percussion here. Okay, it needs a little extra piano over here. Maybe we need to take this part out for this section. So you can always, if you work with a good engineer and a good studio, even if you record everything live together, you can take parts out and move things around to build an ultimate studio mix, this is the arrangement from the studio. But sometimes with, especially with talented musicians who have a lot of other things going on, you can always get everyone together at the same time. So it's, with certain people on the album, it's like, well, I'm excited to work with this person. They want to be on the album, but they can only do it this one day. So we're going to have to record all the other parts and then leave room for their parts. So you also have to be able to, I guess when you're recording it, you have to be able to imagine what their part would sound like in order to leave room for it, so you're not stepping on their toes later in the composition.
Yeah, I recently had Gerald Albright, a saxophonist, who's been around for over 30 years and played with some of the greats. And there's something about like a saxophone too. It's kind of I call it the saxophone. It's kind of the sexy instrument, that really can really kind of bring out that kind of mood, the physical mood, out of an instrument. Are there any particular instruments or players that you really like to play with that you find very complementary to your style?
Instruments or
Yeah,
players in
instrument.
general?
Well, players in general, or drummers, or piano. I mean, what would you like to accompany you? And yeah, are there any people out there that you really get grooving with?
Well, I kind of like to meet any artist that I perform with. I like to meet them in the middle. So, a good artist will always try to make sure, no matter what they're doing, they're listening to you also. So if I like to play with people who can listen as much as they can play on their own. So, and that's what I really loved about the band that I've got on my Driving It Down album that we hand selected for this album. Um, the drummer is always, his name's Rick Leno. He's always on tempo. He's not throwing so much in on drums that he ends up getting off, or that people can't follow him, or that it's too messy, or you know what I mean? His tempo is rock solid. He comes up with the best drum part for that genre, whatever the genre is. Mark Winchester, the bass player that I've been hiring for this album, playing with, he used to play in a Brian Setzer orchestra. He's great at both electric bass and upright bass, but he slaps the upright bass as good as just about anybody on earth that I've ever seen. And it's just amazing to watch him do that. So, with him, knowing that he was on board for the album, I purposely arranged some parts for him to really shine on, and for us to kind of go back and forth rhythmically. And, so it's like that, where you pick certain members, and when you're playing with a member that has a strength with one thing, I think it's the most enjoyable and the most rewarding for the listener to meet him, so you get, the best of what I can do, and you get the best of what the other person can do. And if you have a band where everyone's sharing like that, then it just becomes a sound, So you have bands like the Grateful Dead always worked as a band. So, even if they hit wrong notes or sang out of key or did this and that, they were all there for each other, supporting this huge sound that came out. And I think that's what makes bands like that so resonant with the audience.
Do you ever have any singers performing with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Me personally, and a lot of the performances, videos you'll see online from me are instrumental. But this album I'm working on now actually has, I think, 4 or 5 songs at least with vocals on them. Different musicians that I've enjoyed. The voices to me is just another instrument,
Yes.
And so I like to pick vocalists the same way I like to choose what instruments and what instrumentalists are going to be on the album. And I've got a great singer, Bill Miller, who's going to be on several tracks. John Carter Cash, who is the son of June Carter and Johnny Cash. He's singing on the album. He was actually the producer of my last album. And his wife, Anna Christina Cash, is also singing on the album. So I've got several singers on this album.
It's quite interesting lately, for the love of music genre, when I've been looking for musicians. Some are sent to me, but some I found the music and I really like them, and I reach out to interview them. And so many of them are in Nashville, and they may not be pure country artists. It could be country blues, country rock, or just straight blues and jazz. But Nashville seems to be the hub for not just country music, but for all musicians.
Oh, absolutely. It really is. They call it Music City. And for the size of this city, which, it's a major city, but it's small in comparison to places like New York or LA. But it has the entertainment, flowing through it. So many musicians live in Nashville or have homes in Nashville, have studios in Nashville, record in Nashville, they're publishers in Nashville, or they're, the record pressing plants in Nashville. The people who are looking for, if you want to collaborate with people, or if you're just a music fan and you want to see someone live, if you're in Nashville or you see them in Nashville, a lot of times you can catch them in venues they normally wouldn't play, that might be smaller, more intimate, and you'll just be able to see them more often as well and have the opportunity to work with them more often. And Bootsy Collins, for example, who's another one of my heroes, and invented funk bass pretty much, as far as I'm concerned. He's also going to be singing on my album, my new album. And when we started talking, and I told him I was here in Nashville, he's in Cincinnati, is where he lives, but he comes through Nashville all the time. And again, that's most musicians who tour a lot are always coming through Nashville, and that's just one of the things I love about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually the person who my intro music is a lady called Danae, and she's actually in Nashville as well. And when I interviewed her, she allowed me to have her song New Directions, which I thought was a great music for the show, as we're called Self-Discovery Radio. So she allowed me to have that music for as my intro, which is great. And she said she was drawn to Nashville because also the support there, that you don't kind of get lost, and that there's so much support in the community there.
Absolutely. There's a huge art scene, and they support art, film, music, create those creative artistic mediums. They just love them here, and they support them. People go out to shows. There's a ton of music venues, and people love going to them. It's just a great place to be as an artist.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I love is I watch The Voice because I really love the way they choose and mentor performers. It's not, there is the competitive side of things, of course, but it's really that watching somebody grow, even if they've been in the music scene for a long time, the kind of confidence, the feeling they're not going anywhere. And then, on the show, it's through that mentoring and that watering and redirecting, they suddenly find their voice or find themselves again. But the band there is just exceptional. And when you get a performer that performs with a band, they're all musical instruments at that point. It isn't just the singer backed by the band. That singer is a part of the band, and you get the whole experience. It's very, very different, isn't it, when the singer is that musical instrument in the band as opposed to just the band backing the singer.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's a difference in the way it feels when you perform it. There's a difference in the way it comes across. And there's just a lot I think with music, there's so much going on under the actual surface. There's a lot of subconscious emotion being conveyed. And, it has to, I think that subconscious emotion has to sync up with the conscious feel of the song. And when you have the two in sync is when you really get those goosebump moments. And there have been a lot of bands that didn't get along and have been really successful. And I think for some bands, especially heavier bands or rock and roll bands, more aggressive sounds, sometimes the fact that they all hate each other makes the music better because they put that into the music. Yeah. But I've seen a lot of bands and been in some bands where that doesn't work, and I think it's because that doesn't go with the music and that doesn't go with the vibe of the personalities involved. And so I think like you're saying, when there's whether it's a singer or whether it's a lead instrumentalist or whatever, the person who's kind of putting that melody out there, if they have a background foundation that's there to support them and that's there to move around them and move with them, that's when the magic really happens. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. I can't play an instrument. I can't read a note. But I used to be a dancer. And, music to me is, if I need an escape, I'll listen to music and I'm dancing in my mind. My spirit is out there completely. I'm singing. I'm the perfect singer and dancer in my spirit. And there's something about music that sets you free. It's so healing. It's so uplifting. It speaks to you. I mean, you could have a dozen people listening to the same song, and each one of them has got a different feeling and has learned something different from it. It's really part of our oxygen, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think it's just like your heartbeat, that has that natural rhythm that you're not even aware of, but you'd be nothing without it. And I think there's just something that people tap into when they hear a rhythm or a melody or, an authentic, honest expression artistically in the form of music. It just captures you in a way that nothing else can.
Right. Well, this is, one of the sad things that we're seeing. There's so many musical, music being cut out of schools, which I think is a real big mistake, because I think it's not only a wonderful, that is that person's expression. It is that language. I think it's a great discovery for people. I think it's a wonderful way of uniting, and it's sad to see that happen. But you're a founder of a school called Roots Music School. So tell us how that came about.
Well, that came about from touring. You know, when I was I guess probably a couple years into full time. My fiance Nikki and I actually at one point sold everything we owned and moved full time onto the road. So we didn't even have an address. We were just constantly one show to the other, living on the road in a small RV. And it was about 2 years of the process that, so many people were enjoying what we did, but they wanted to learn how to do it. They wanted to learn either about what I was doing on guitar or about the history and about the culture that it shows and where the music came from. Where do you learn to do something like that? Where do you learn to play a 3-string shovel guitar,
Mm-hmm.
And so it started with me just posting a few lessons or posting a few videos explaining some of my songs when people would write in and ask me. And, each one I put up led to more and more discussion, more questions, more interest. And I love the, little culture that started building around those. And I wanted to, help give people more. It seemed to be making people happy. And that's what eventually grew into rootsmusicschool.com, into my DVD series, book series. And, also, I've worked with several schools to, like what you're saying, when music departments get cut in schools, it leaves a huge hole in, what these children should be learning at that point in their life. And so I worked with a few teachers, one in particular in Oregon. I worked with a teacher named Nick Chrissy, and we not only actually went out there and taught them for a week. We not only taught them how to play roots instruments, these little 3-string guitars we taught them how to make, but they actually made them themselves. So they made 150 guitars from scratch, and then by the end of the week, we were all playing together on them. And what it teaches you, and it teaches you not music, but it teaches you math, it teaches you science, engineering, it teaches you history. When I was traveling to go out to Oregon, I was in Memphis at the time, and we went down Route 66. And everywhere we went, every day, we'd tell the students at the school where we were, so they even learned geography from that experience together.
I mean, it's a
the key is...
That's how people learn, isn't
What's
it?
that?
Hands-on.
Absolutely.
You can have so much theory, but unless you get into it, the tactile, the touch, the hearing, the feeling, the participation, you don't truly actually understand until you immerse yourself in it fully and completely. And so, the getting stuck behind a desk and just learning theory isn't the same as you said, making the instrument, discovering what that instrument can do, the pride in it, so much.
Absolutely.
I mean, how many musicians have you seeded here that we're going to be hearing about in the future?
Exactly. And what I learned and really took that particular experience too is on a scientific level, children at that age, this was 5th grade, and if they don't learn at a certain point that they can work their own, if they want something and can't buy it or can't ask their parents for it, they can learn at that age that they can build something and then they'll have it. And it's one of those things that if they don't use, I think neurologically, it stops being important. It stops being developed. And so if you can develop the understanding of the concept that you can make your life the way you want it to be, then if they learn that from a guitar, that's an experience that's going to serve them through their whole life, musically and non-musically, because they know they can work for something. And I could tell, the students, when they actually played their first actual song and it sounded like music, they just had this look on their face that was so excited. It was like they just saw a magic trick, but they did a magic trick themselves.
They discovered the magic within them.
Exactly. It was really, really special.
I think,
that's what Roots Music School is all about. I just want to give that feeling to as many people as possible and help people share that as well.
Yeah, a beautiful gift to resonate. And of course, It doesn't have to be you being there. It's kind of they can get the DVDs and the books and everything else, and do it wherever they are, so they're not caught by the demographics if they're not around where you are.
Exactly.
Right. And this is kind of the way a lot of learning is going now. We're realizing the mainstream curriculums are not paying attention, and so we're getting all of these kind of virtual schools, and it's reaching people, and allowing more people actually to make that discovery, what they need to discover. So, and again, when you're talking about making a guitar out of an oil can, or a shovel and a few other things that you've made that are out of it, just shows that anything is possible. You don't have to say, well, I need the 5,000 guitar or I can't play. If you've got that ingenuity, that innovation, you can make it out of anything.
Exactly.
So we need more of that. Most certainly we need more of that. Now, there was another instrument you're playing, and God knows what it is. It was beautifully carved wood, oval looking, with one string. What is that?
I think the one that it's not actually carved wood; it's ceramic.
Oh, really?
And so it's that one was sent to me from Ireland by a amazing artist named Andrew Cook, and he's actually sent me a couple of those, and he makes them all out of found objects around his property. The body, it looks like carved wood, but it's actually sculpted ceramic that he then fires, and then it becomes hard and resonant. He hand wires his own electric guitar pickup, so every part of it, even the electronics, are made out of salvaged parts and put together in a very natural, rootsy way. But when you look at it when it's done, it just looks like a piece of artwork. Yeah. It looks like a sculpture. You're not quite sure what to do with it. You just see this one string on it, one or two strings. But then, when you hear it, when you plug it in and you play it with a guitar slide, it just has this voice. Yeah, it sounds like a human voice when you play it. That's the thing I think it sounds most like. And I've got several videos performing blues songs with that. It's called a one-string diddly bow. That's a traditional American term for a one-string roots instrument.
And I know the sound of it was amazing. I mean, and just mind-blowing, because it's like you can get all that sound. I had to look. I had to really look. That's only one string there. How is he getting all that sound out of that?
Exactly, and that's the key to the one-string diddly bow, and that's why so many great blues legends started on the one-string diddly bow, is because when you learn how to play a song with one string, with no frets, just one string and a slide, then you learn how to get music out of the least amount possible, basically, as far as a stringed instrument's concerned. And once you do that, if you can play that diddly bow with your eyes closed, if you pick up a 2-string or a 3-string or a 4-string or 5-string or 6-string, and so on, it just becomes a simpler concept. I could play any one of these strings. I could play a song on any one of these strings by itself. But when you add new strings, you add harmony to that melody and you add depth to it. And so there's just this, it's like a magical power you get basically from learning the one-string diddly bow when it comes to guitars, that informs things and makes you play completely differently after you really master it.
So when you pick up an instrument, is it, I'm going to play this song, or you just fiddle around with it and let the song come from it?
I always, unless I'm performing and I already know what song I'm going to play, I always let the instrument guide the direction of the song. I really feel a close bond with whatever instrument I'm playing. And some of the videos you see online of me performing, or if you see me perform live with a new instrument, it's almost always an improvisation that is guided by the tone and the feel and it's almost like a dance between me and the instrument. Sometimes I'll play it once and I'll retune it and I'll realize this instrument sounds much better in this tuning, or with this type of string tension, or through this type of amp, or maybe this one sounds better with a slide and this one sounds better fretted.
Well, there's one you've got, When My Guitar Gently Weeps, performed on a vintage oil can guitar, and that is, and you've changed the tempo on it, and it's just, it's so soothing.
And that was another song. I've played that song, only a few times before I played that video, and something about that guitar though, it just felt like I need to play a guitar song with this. I need to play, and some of my favorite songs to do instrumental versions of are Beatles songs because they have such great melodies, and you can recognize the song even without hearing the lyrics.
Yeah, definitely.
Something about that, the way that the notes held out on that instrument with the oil can getting picked up, just like the strings, the oil can gets picked up by that electric guitar pickup, so you can actually hear the can, which you can't hear with wooden guitars. And so there was something about the percussament of that can with it. It sounded kind of like the drums were in there, even though they weren't. And the tone of the pickup was great, nice, full, and rich. And yeah, I play on something for a few minutes, and then it's like, I got to record this, get the camera, or something like that.
Yeah,
so something good's going to happen. I don't know what it is. Yeah.
So basically, as you're playing, we're kind of discovering with you, because you're investigating and exploring what the sound is, and the camera is on you and kind of exploring it with you, which is really cool.
Absolutely. And a lot of times, when you see a video, that instrument will have written that song. Like, I don't know how many times I've performed an improvisation, and then a lot of people said, I really like that song, and then it ends up on an album because of that back and forth with the fans online, because they showed an interest in a certain song. And otherwise, I might not have ever played that song. If it hadn't been recorded, I definitely wouldn't have remembered it a lot of times.
Right.
But there's something about that chemistry that between Nikki, who's always behind the camera and she's capturing it, and then between us and the fans who give us feedback on what they want to hear more of and what they love the most.
Are you one of these people that you'll be so caught up in the moment of making a song, and then it's done, and if you haven't recorded it, you couldn't duplicate it?
Well, there's some things that just happen like lightning striking, and certain things are hard to replicate. But I think a technique is generally easier to replicate than feel or vibe, and that's the elusive part. Is in the studio, when you're really under the microscope, you could play a song 5 or 10 times, and you take that one take at the beginning and you say that felt good, but let's get better, and then you play it again and again and again and again and again, and by the end of it, it doesn't even sound good anymore. It hardly even sounds like that first take, and you listen back and say, let's go with the first take. We got it right the first time.
Right.
But I think what happens is your techniques are getting better, but the feel is getting worse because it becomes automated, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And
overdone.
That's the elusive part.
Yeah.
Overthought. You can't think too much, especially if you're improvising. You really can't think. It's all about practicing and then forgetting everything while you're actually performing.
Yeah. Now I have to talk about the look, because I'm a 70s chick. I was the hippie chic in my time. And your look is very much a throwback to the 70s. Is this something that is just your aesthetic? This is just you? Is there any consciousness behind it?
Well, a lot of times if I'm getting, clothes or hat or jewelry or something like that, it's generally me and my fiance, Nikki. We love to do everything together, and shopping is one of those things. So, I think we always like to think about the people that we love. I love musicians. Like, it's not just about the music, but it's about the way that they are always just being creative. We love to be creative with our clothes and with our look, just like we like to be creative with music. And it's another thing that we consider as very much a form of expression, and it's also very authentic. It's very personal to us.
Very much your presence. It's like the whole package. Yeah. Yeah. People kind of visually take in first before
that's what life's all about. That's definitely what music's all about, and entertainment's all about it.
Definitely. If there was a person, living or dead, that you could play with on your bucket list that you haven't played with yet, who would it be?
Well, there's 3 guitar players that I've always felt like these are my 3 biggest influences, and it's Jimi Hendrix on electric guitar, Django Reinhardt and Doc Watson on acoustic guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen Doc Watson a couple times live, but I've never seen Jimi Hendrix or Django Reinhardt in person. Yeah, so either of those two, it would be amazing to actually see how they do things in person. You know, I would love to have the chance to have seen those players or talked to them, or of course played with them. And I feel like one of those, like, you know, as a guitar player, I'm always looking at other guitar players and thinking, if it's something I like, you know, how are they doing that? Or how's that effect being created? So, you know, in that particular way, and you can answer so many of those questions by seeing people, and you actually, with personalities, you know, too, like Jimi Hendrix, I would love to just see his personality in person. I would love to see how he carries himself and how he plays guitar, just because he's a role model.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know, there are some people, and I think we can put you in this category. You don't play music; you are the music. You know, it's your language, it's your expression, it's your pouring of energy. So you know, it's sometimes you do musicians, and they're not nearly as articulate as their music. You know, they are only their music, and they're not very good communicative in other ways. You speak your music in a very articulate way as well as play it. So you know the people that are performing for performance sake, and the people that are the performance, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely, I do. And there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of both out there. You know, a lot of people that are in between. And you know, I've talked a lot about music and thought a lot about music. And you know, I guess one of the things is with teaching too, when you're teaching someone how to play music, it has so much to do with how you're able to describe what you're talking about. It has less to do with your ability, because there are a lot of great people who can't teach music or can't communicate music as well. But then when you listen to them, it's amazing. You know, it's just a free-flowing stream of consciousness kind of thing. So I think it's really, especially for teaching and for conveying those messages and the philosophy behind it, that, you know, it's important to be articulate about that kind of thing, because it's a very personal thing.
Yeah. You know, I think we're all given a gift, you know, and it's some people can spend a lifetime trying to find out what that gift is in life, you know, because they've lived by other people's expectation. But one thing I do find with people in the arts, whether a person's a writer or an actor, an artist or a musician, it doesn't matter what else you've done, you will always be that artist. It is who you are. In your wholeness and completeness, and you couldn't be anything else other than be what you are. In your case, the musician.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, a lot of times if you try to be something else, you won't be happy, and you'll be reaching back for that thing that you denied in that sense. But yeah, I've always, you know, and again, I've always loved music, but it was that moment really of playing the guitar for the first time that I thought, you know, it felt different than playing the piano or the trumpet or the trombone or any of the other instruments that I had already played up at that point. It just was like, this one's made for me. You know, the guitar is the thing that it feels like the thing that I can express myself on.
It's your language. You have to communicate
Absolutely.
with it. So but not only you know, you have a good conversation with it, you're willing to learn a new language from it, because every time you pick up a different type of instrument, it's a new variation of a language, isn't it?
Absolutely. It totally is. It's like a new throat. You know, you're speaking the same with a new throat with every instrument you pick up, and you have to learn how to use it, and you have to learn its strengths and its weaknesses, and figure out how to convey that story that's trapped inside that instrument, that song.
Has there been anything that's just been a little totally bizarre, you know, that you've been asked to play, and you go, you know, this is just too peculiar, but it surprised you?
Well, you know, that's out of all the instruments I've played, I probably have 100 or more stories like that would fit in that category. Yes, I've played a lot of very, very unusual instruments, some of which are almost, you know, dangerous to play. I've had to like, kind of childproof some of the instruments that have been given to me over the years, and
what's
other
the weirdest
instruments,
then?
You know,
Share those weird, dangerous ones.
There was one, and I still play it quite a bit, especially live. Was an upright bass guitar that was built for me. It's all metal, and it was welded together out of different parts of the chassis of a truck and bicycles. And so it's huge, and I think it weighs pounds. And the wheel actually the wheel is the body of it, and it actually spins, so it's very hard to control. And the first show, again, this was a guitar builder who came out to one of my shows, and he gave this instrument to me right before the show and asked if I could play it. And I played an 4-string electrified upright truck chassis bicycle guitar. And so I put it on stage, and about halfway through the first set, it started rolling off stage, and I had to go get it. And after that, I figured out I ended up duct taping the tire to where it stopped moving, and found a way to secure it. But again, it sounds amazing. It sounds like a tank too. Such a strong presence, and with the bass, you want that a lot of times. And again, it sounds amazing, but it's one of those instruments that at first it just takes you a little while to figure out how you're going to approach this thing, because it's so different than a conventional instrument.
Wait, the instruments have characters of themselves, don't they? They are a character, each instrument that you have.
Yes, absolutely. And I love classic instruments and conventional instruments just as much as I love roots instruments. And so, the nicety on my last album, If Walls Could Talk, I played some of the nicest acoustic and electric instruments out there. 59 Les Paul Sunburst, which are one of the most expensive or one of the most valuable instruments you can buy today, electric guitars at least. And it just sounds so good. There's like a classic nature to the sound, or an old, early 50s Telecaster or something like that, an old Lohr mandolin, Gibson mandolin from the 20s. And, these are sounds that have become part of almost like human society now, because these are basically kind of considered the best versions of the tone, like a Les Paul tone. All that 59 Les Paul tone is classic. Same with these other ones I'm talking about. And so I crave those tones just as much as I do the unusual tones that you get from something like a shovel guitar or a bicycle upright bass. Yeah. But the art is how to put those together artfully and make those statements to say, there is a place for this instrument in the mainstream sound, in the sound of the world, and it just has to be stated in order for people to understand that. It has to be put out there in the right way.
How many instruments do you actually have? Do you know?
I think over I've got a storage facility here in Nashville, completely full of instruments, and then I've got another one in North Carolina full of instruments. And over the years in touring and people giving me instruments to play and record with and showcase with, I'd say I probably have at least over 300 at this point, instruments.
And do you go back and kind of recycle them, like, okay, I'm going to play you set of instruments for a while now, kind of bring them out of the storage?
Oh, absolutely.
And
yeah, just about every time we go by the storage facility, I switch a few out and dust off some old ones that I haven't played in a while. And every time you get new songs, you get new inspiration, and it's just fun. They're all different. They're just like old friends you haven't seen in a while.
Yeah, exactly. When is Driving It Down coming out, and are you going to be going on tour?
Well, I'll be releasing the album. It's slated for a March release. So like I said, we're just finishing up the final mixing right now, and then it'll be about 3 weeks to a month. Hopefully after that, we'll be able to, release the release date for sure. And then after that, I am going to be touring throughout 2017, and you can check out my tour schedule at Just Johnson Live. And that's got all the tour dates there. We're adding more, as they get booked, and so you can always check the calendar there. And then after that, though, we're going to be. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask if the Drag It Down, will there be a pre-order up on Justin johnsonlive.com. Will you have a pre-order link there?
Yes, definitely. As soon as we know the release, then we'll make it available for pre-order, and we'll let everyone know exactly when it's going to hit the streets and when we're going to be sending it out.
Excellent.
And I'm really excited. It's going to be a double album. It's going to be all, kind of upbeat, high-octane blues. Just really looking forward to getting this out there. I've been listening to it for months now as I've been recording it, and so I know every note of it, but I can't wait till other people get to hear it.
I can't wait to hear it myself either, most certainly. As I said, I went to go and pick a couple of YouTubes just to put up on the posting, and then I got lost, like it's an hour later, you should be in bed, Sarah, and I'm still listening to the music. You took me off on a trip, and there is a fundamental rhythm and groove to you that carries through everything, but you've also got such different kind of diversity through your songs. But it's like your thread of who you are is in everything that you do, no matter what you play.
Absolutely, and always what I'm trying to convey is that genuine expression. Whatever you hear from me, it might be any genre you can imagine, but it's going to have that core Justin Johnson vibe, because I just want to put myself into it and make it as honest and authentic as I can.
And of course you have the rootsmusicschool.com and also rootsmusicschool.org. One is a blog and one is the site?
Yes, exactly.
.org
and
is
they're
the
both
blog.
Linked together, and
Okay.
they both have lessons and video links, all of that. So if you go to one, you'll find the other eventually.
Right. And I think this is, a great gift to give a youngster, who is taking that musical path. Great gift to sign them up for this and let them kind of explore. You can't make a musician, but what you can do is guide and nurture a musician. But you have to let them discover their music themselves.
Absolutely. It's hard to force people to be interested in something. Usually forcing someone to be interested in something is the best way to make them hate it, from what I've seen.
Absolutely. So you and your fiancée, have you written her a love song yet?
Oh, yeah, every one I've ever played.
Good answer. Well, I hope you're going to be doing one particularly for your wedding. It's going to be your song.
Absolutely.
Good. I've so enjoyed interviewing you. Your music, as I said, is awesome. Just the instruments, the sounds you get from them, the originality, the authenticity, the groove, the vibe, the way you just kind of jump right in and make a person feel so good. Your music is absolutely brilliant. I can't wait for the album to come out, and I wish you so well. You got your Facebook here, folks, too, on that Justin Johnson Live on Facebook, and it's been an honor to interview you.
Well, likewise. Thanks for having me, and I look forward to next time.
Oh, yeah, I've got to have you back again. Once the album is out and down the road a little bit, I'd love to have you back on again. And thank you for being so real and putting out music that is so fundamentally soul music. It speaks to the soul, it speaks to the heart, and lifts the spirit, and it's music for my soul, that's for sure. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Until next time, folks, remember, if you're ever feeling something in your life that you need an answer to, just put on music and you'll find it. I highly recommend that you listen to Justin Johnson's music. You'll get lost in it and you'll come out the other end feeling so good. So until next time, folks, bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show right here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. Please tune in to our selfdiscoverymedia.com/shows and you will see all the other genres that we have from you. Every week on Tuesday, we bring you new shows from illuminating people. If you know someone that should be interviewed, please contact us at info@selfdiscoverymedia.com. Now stay tuned for your next show.